Hi and welcome. I'm Lisa. Thanks for joining me here on the Whimsy Stamps channel for another card making tutorial. Quickly, I want to remind everyone there's a party over on the Whimsy Stamps blog this month and everyone is invited. Whimsy's giving away prizes, sharing inspiration from the design team, and several special guest designers have been making appearances. So we hope you'll hop over there and join in the fun. Today, I'm sharing how to create an easy Halloween easel card. I'll be talking about partial die cutting, adding a hidden message to the card. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm starting off with 100-pound Nina Avalanche white cardstock that measures 5.5 inches by 11 inches. So we're going to take this to the scoreboard and score it at the 5.5 inch mark. Once we have it scored, we'll flip it over, make sure everything's lining up correctly, and give it a good crease. We have a 5.5 by 5.5 inch card base now. Go ahead, lay it flat on the scoreboard again and score at the 2-inch mark. Give it a good crease again along that score line. And we have our card base ready. We'll set it to the side. So I'm using a 6x6 pattern paper from one of my favorite Halloween paper packs, Haunted. And I've trimmed this paper to 5.5 by 5.5 inches using my paper trimmer. I do find it best to trim from all four sides to keep that scene centered. I want to do some partial die cutting around the moon, but I have to be mindful of where I'm cutting. I don't want that card base peeking out from behind my pattern paper. I do know I need at least 2 inches to cover this area of the card, so I'm simply going to lay down a few tick marks using a pencil to keep me in check while I'm doing that partial die cutting. Now, I decide to play it on the safe side. I add my tick marks at 2 1/8 of an inch mark, one on each side of the paper, and I make sure that I can see those marks as I'm adding them. I'm ready to start die cutting. I'm using the 4-inch round die from the Whimsy Stamps Stitched and Pierced round die set. I've secured my paper to the magic mat using my Scotch tape, and I'm using that same tape to hold that 4-inch die in place once I have it centered over the moon. So I'm going to grab the top cutting plate and I'm going to line the edge of the cutting plate up with the tick marks because that's where I want to stop cutting. So partial die cutting is easy if you remember this. Only apply pressure where you want to cut. So let's go ahead and crank this through the die cutting machine and then we'll bring it back out. We'll carefully remove that stitched and pierced round die and I'll show you how this partially die cut the moon. This is actually really easy. Okay, so this next step is so easy using that straight grass die from that Grass and Cloud Edger die set again. We're going to slide that die behind the partially die cut moon, making sure it's covering the paper from side to side. Go ahead, crank that through the machine. We'll remove it so you can see what we've done here. It gives us a nice grassy border on both sides while cutting our paper apart. And there you can see how the paper is going to lay on our 5.5 by 5.5 inch card base. All right, so once I have this assembled, I don't want to see white peeking out from behind the scene. So I'm going to do a little bit of coloring and ink blending to the card base before permanently adhering that pattern paper to the card base. I trace around the edge of the moon with my pencil. Here you can see the pencil marks. I'm going to use a black Copic marker to color this area in so that when the recipient stands the card up, that area will blend in with the pattern paper. I'm being careful not to go past the pencil marks because we're going to do a little bit of ink blending and give our moon a little bit of color back here. So I'm using Memento dye inks in the colors Cantaloupe and Dandelion. I'm using a blender brush for this. And I'm using the pattern paper as a guide because I want this moon to kind of look like the moon on the pattern paper. I'm adding the darker yellow to the bottom side, and then I'm going to come in from the top with the lighter shade of yellow and work down into the darker shade. Now you can skip this step if you don't mind the white from your cardstock being your moon. I just thought it was an extra special touch to the card. So I'm happy with how this is coming along at this point, and I thought it would be fun to add a stamped sentiment that will be revealed when the card is standing. So I stamped this Happy Haunting sentiment from the Spirited Sentiment stamp set. Also stamped 3 small bats around that sentiment, and those bats are from the Happy Pugaween stamp set. So onto the inside of the card, I ran that straight grass die through the die cutting machine with a piece of black cardstock that's 5.5 inches wide. And once it's cut, the height is 1 7/8 of an inch. And that's from the top of the grass to the bottom of the black cardstock. Now, before I add this, I want to do a little bit of ink blending. So I laid down some tick marks so I could add a piece of tape straight across my card base and create a nice, clean, straight ink blended line there. I'm also going to go ahead and stamp Have a Spooky Halloween on the inside of the card using the stamps from You're My Boo sentiment stamp set. And we'll add double-sided tape to the back of that die-cut black cardstock and go ahead and secure it to the inside of the card. So this is a kickstand that's going to keep this card open once the recipient receives it. Double-sided tape to the back of our pattern paper and go ahead and we'll place those on the front of the card. And that's easy. It's just lining everything up. All right, at this point, you're done with the easel card. You can create whatever scene you want to go on the front of it. I'm going to walk you through my scene quickly. Die cut black cardstock using the grass edger dies. Pop that up off of the front using foam adhesives. I die cut Frank from the Monster Parade die set. Did a little bit of ink blending on him to match the scene using my Memento inks. In Pear, Tart, Cantaloupe, London Fog, Tuxedo Black, added a few foam adhesives to him and then popped him up off the front of the card. Now you do want to be mindful of where you're adding anything with adhesives so your card will open and close with no issues. I'm going to die cut a bat from Dracula's Coffin die set and trees from the Tree Assortment die set. I'm adding those with glue. Again, just being careful of the placement. And then I'm finishing this off with the ink word and die and shadows cut from black, white, and yellow cardstock. Add foam adhesives to it to pop it up off the front of the card. And that's going to wrap up my time with you today. Let me know what you think of this Easy Easel card in the comments below. And for more information on the products seen in this video, you can click the links directly below to head over to the Whimsy Stamps website to check it out. I appreciate you so much for spending time with me today. Until next time, please take care.